Right, I make it 4 o'clock, so if we get started, and then obviously there's going to be a recording of this, and so this will be made available to you afterwards. So if you miss any point in the session, or you've got others who want to share it, then you can use the recording. Just to draw your attention to a few things, bit of housekeeping. So while the presenters are speaking, everyone's mics and cameras will be disabled. We do have the Q&A function, and you can put any questions in there that you have during the session. We will respond to the ones that we can during the session, and any others will be responded to in the Q&A session at the end. So the presenters at the end will start by addressing any unanswered questions, and then if you want to raise your hand and come onto the mic, then that's absolutely fine to ask your questions. Otherwise, just put them in the Q&A. So thank you for joining us today. My name's Karra McFarlane, and I'm the publisher of ELS at Oxford University Press. And I'm here with Tara Dodson, who is one of the authors of ELS. So Tara's going to kick off, and then you'll have me talking again shortly. Thanks so much for joining.
Okay, can I? Ah, great, there we go. I can control your PowerPoint. So we're going to talk this afternoon about what ELS Essential Spelling is, the components that make up ELS Essential Spelling, what an ELS Essential Spelling looks like in practice, a little bit of information about the training and the costs, and then if you have any questions, as Karra said, we'll take those at the end, but please do put them in the chat box. There's a bit where I'm going to hand over to Karra, and the ones that are in the chat box at that point, I will start to answer them. So you don't need to wait until the very end if you've got something to say. So ELS Essential Spelling is an online spelling program. It's written to match the format and structure of ELS. So it's lots of things that you're familiar with: review, teach, practice, apply. It's the same sort of feel, the same vocabulary when we're talking about spelling, and in a similar way, we've used lots of imagery and reading to support you, and it's offering that phase 6 solution. So it's taking you from what the end of the phase 5 teaching is, this what we call our phase 5 alternatives in the spring term of year 1, and then taking that into phase 6, which is that spelling. Not to be confused with teaching the GPCs in year 1. They're not taught for. Oh, somebody's saying they can't hear me. Can you hear me, Karra?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Anyone else who can't hear?
Fingers crossed it's just that speaker. If you can't hear me, put it in the chat box, and then I'll do something magical and technical, I'm sure. Phase 6 is about spelling. The GPCs that we teach in year 1, they are for reading. So it is a very different skill, and we know that spelling is really complex. I know Katie and I, in all the training videos, we keep telling you how complicated learning to read is. Learning to spell is even harder. So it's offering that solution to really make sure that you are embedding the teaching of spelling and that you're supporting the children going from that reading to writing. It covers everything in the year 2 national curriculum, including all the common exception words, including homophones and near homophones. There's a little bit of grammar in there. It also covers contractions, for apostrophes for contractions and apostrophes for possession. So absolutely everything. And if you've had a look at the handbook already, you will see at the back there is a sheet where we go through the whole curriculum, and it says yes next to each point because they're all being covered. It's designed to be taught in 3 lessons across the week. And those are 20 to 30 minutes. It depends how much time you have in your timetable for teaching it, but it's there for you. Again, the same with ELS, everything is pre-planned, and we've got optional spelling lists for year 1 and year 2. You'll notice that year 1 spelling list starts at AI, and a year 2 spelling list, some of it's highlighted in green, and those are the ones that also appear in our assessments. So what do you get? You get these 3 lessons per week. It's 111 whiteboard presentations in total, and the apply activities that go alongside it. It's giving you that structured approach, that teacher knowledge there to support you. It builds spelling into the week so that we're actually teaching it, not just testing it. And it's drawing on your existing knowledge that you've been teaching your children through ELS or whatever SSP you've been teaching prior to that. It covers those national curriculum requirements, and that familiar format is going to reduce the cognitive load for your children. Though some of the lessons are a little bit different dependent on the content, the structure is the same. Allow the children to feel familiar. So spelling, To be able to encode, to spell with success, children need to first know, recognise and understand the sounds to spelling correlation, so that when they're reading, they can recognise the sounds that they are reading, they can decode fluently. It provides children with an opportunity to revise the code that they already know by looking at those GPCs that we've already been teaching in ELS. And you'll see in our handbook that we have shown you everywhere that there is reuse from ELS. So every time your children have already seen something, we tell you where it is in ELS. So you know what that knowledge and how long they've had that information for. We have opted to avoid teaching set rules. We know that they are so often broken. We have given you subject knowledge to support you, to help you teach the children how to spell. And our chosen way that we're doing that is we are talking about the way that we are spelling the sounds within words. So we are focusing in on that GPC, which is what we've been doing if you've taught ELS already. It is that continuation. It does build upon the progression that's been taught in reception and in year one. And it covers, as I've said, I'm going to say it a few times today, all the statutory statements in the national curriculum. So please do, if you're thinking, oh, I don't know where that appears, it is in the back of the book, and it tells you, yes, it appears, and it actually tells you which half term it appears in. So you can be 100% certain in the knowledge that the entirety of the national curriculum for year 2, which I can assure you was a beast to fit in, Katie really worked her magic there on the progression. Everything is in there, and we've put the curriculum together. I'll talk about the progression in a minute, but we've put it together in a logical way. So why did we write ELS Essential Spelling? Because spelling is so often on your timetables, but we don't always know how to teach spelling, and it's not always taught. Sometimes we are just testing children on those 10 words that we send home every week. And there seems to be this really heavy emphasis on testing spelling, but not always on the same emphasis on teaching it. So we've done this by making connections and linking between reading and writing. And you'll see in every lesson there's reading that happens, and the spellings that we're going to focus on, not just in that lesson, but across the whole week, appear in those sentences that we are reading. We are building on what children already know, and we're giving children the knowledge to see and then spell the words individually and in context, which is why the imagery is there to support you so often, so you can give the children the meaning of those words. They'll have read words that if there is a specific word type as you move through the program, we're talking about adverbs or adjectives, or you can then say to the children, look, here they are in context, here they are in that reading sentence at the beginning, let's think about what that word is doing here. So there's lots of opportunity to support you in teaching your children about vocabulary, about language, and about how and where we use those words that we're going to learn how to spell. So there is training for this. It is £40 for the whole year. It's a half day of CPD. It's designed for the staff that are teaching spelling. With ELS, when you think about early reading, or your phonics program, think about early reading, every single member of staff needs to understand how your school teaches early reading. For this spelling program, you could watch the Essence, which is kind of the brief introduction for ELS Essential Spelling, so that everybody understood what was going on or what's going to happen next. But these videos are designed for the staff that are going to teach spelling. They go into detail about the progression through the autumn, spring and summer term and each of the lesson types. Because in ELS, if you've been teaching that, there are only 4 lesson plans, and there are a few more different types of lessons when it comes to the teaching of spelling. But that's where our subject knowledge and our handbook comes in. And so that training is available from us directly at essentiallettersandsounds.org. There are 2 subscriptions, as there are with ELS, and Karra's going to talk to you more about how and where those 2 things fit together. So the progression. In the autumn term, we are looking at specific GPCs that appear in the curriculum. Almost all of these have already been taught as part of ELS for reading. And we tell you, again, where to find those. In autumn 1, we are teaching that specific spelling for the first time. And because this is the most complex part, we've put it at the beginning, so that in autumn 2, you can review each of those specific spellings. There are suffixes in spring 1, where there is a change to the root word, where we're doubling the consonants. In spring 2, we look at dropping the E and adding a suffix, and we've got some specific spellings and apostrophes as in spring 2. In summer 1, we've got suffixes where there is no change to the root word. And in summer 2, we've got drop Y, add I, and then add a suffix. And that is there in the progression because it's the thing that we don't necessarily have to have as much evidence of to support us with our writing outcomes. The way that we've put things together in each half term is that you are looking at where you're adding a suffix. You look at the suffix as in a group. So you might do 3 days on the ed ending, and each day it will be spelling a different sound. So it will spell id, d, or the same that we do in ELS. So the children aren't having to think about, is this Y spelling E or I? It's only spelling that one today. So we've grouped them by sound as well to make it as simple for the children as possible. And where we're adding suffixes to words, we might teach them to spell that root word and add one suffix, but they might not then have that same word taught to them explicitly within the lesson, but it might appear within the bank of 6 words in the lesson or in the sentences that we're going to read or write. So there is that constantly looking at, here is one root word and here's a few different ways that we can change it. And we put examples of this in the subject knowledge for each half term. Every single lesson is planned for you, and we've maintained that structure: review, teach, practice and apply. The whiteboards are interactive. That little pen icon is your best friend. If you see it on your screen, you do need to click on it because something's hiding there. And as I said, you know, we've put in this spaced repetition and practice so that we can go over things that we've already taught again. And lots of these things, as I've said, are from ELS. Lots of the harder to read and spell words that we taught in ELS come up as common exception words in the Year 2 national curriculum. And so they're there. Children are going to be aware of them already, but this is a focused time to concentrate on the teaching of spelling. So slightly different to ELS, where you had those 4 lesson plans for the whole of the programme. Here there is a lesson plan for every single day. These lesson plans contain all the subject knowledge that you need as a teacher. And what we've done is we've broken the code down so that you can see which sounds are being spelt by which letter, by which graphemes, and then where we're changing things like dropping a Y and adding an I or dropping an E, you can then see what's happening, what's changing in the spelling within that word, how the sounds the spelling then changes. Absolutely everything you need to know, including any words that you're writing, captions, phrases, sentences, anything that you're asking the children to write is also in the lesson plans for you. So it is a one-stop shop for every single day of teaching. Shows you the words you're going to look at in the lesson and the 3 that you're going to study in depth. And it gives you background information if there is some that's going to support the children's understanding. In some cases, we've said, you know, this is not part of the Year 2 curriculum, but it's good to know that this as well. You might want to know this information as well for your subject knowledge. So we have tried to provide you with absolutely everything to ensure that you can teach spelling really confidently to your children. I'm going to hand over to Karra.
Thank you. So I'm just going to start by talking you through where you can find everything. So this is exactly the same as it is with ELS, in that all of the resources are available from Oxford University Press and on your Oxford OWL teaching subscription. And all of the training is available through the Essential Letters and Sounds website. So you've got resources, you go to Oxford, and on the training, you need to go to the Essential Letters and Sounds website. You do need to have separate subscriptions to both. So neither are expensive, as Tara's just said. The training is £40, the same price as for the online subscription, but you do need to make sure that you have subscriptions to both, and you will need to log into those areas separately.
If you have an ELS phonics training subscription with us and you want to add spelling, it's very simple and it will then just appear in your central dashboard.
And the same will be for Oxford OWL. So they're all in the same places within those separate sites. You'll just get a little separate tab that it's on there. So I'm going to take you through the resources that are available as part of Essential Spelling. So Tara's talked you through the lesson plans. As with ELS, the main structure of your lessons is still those whiteboard presentations. So you've got all of that subject knowledge you need in the lesson plans, and it talks you through the words and the structure, but you can also feel confident that every lesson you put up your whiteboard presentation, and that has everything you need to take you through the lesson. And I'm going to take you through one of those in a moment, just so you can see every step, what you need to do. So the core of the resources are those whiteboard presentations that are available on Oxford OWL, and there's 3 presentations per week. So that's 3 sessions of teaching. We then have sound map with the Phase 5 alternatives. So this is a printed resource available from Oxford University Press, and that's got all the Phase 5 alternatives on a sound map. The spelling poster is the same as the spelling poster that was available as part of your ELS programme, but following questions about having this and people wanting this for spelling, we've made it much bigger so that you can really see those alternative graphemes really clearly and that you can point them out within your lesson. So it is much bigger than the one that was available as part of the SSP. And then we have an apply book. So we've got one apply book for the whole year, and the same for the ELS teaching programme. If you followed that, this is where the children apply their learning, and this gives you a record of what they've been doing in that apply section of the lessons. So each child will need one of these, and it's a printed apply book. And then we've got assessments. So the assessments are available on the Oxford OWL website. They are available both in the handbook and as a separate downloadable PDF if you don't want to scroll through the handbook and you are just going to it for assessments on that day. So these are printable assessments. They're made to be very manageable, and they basically just allow you to see that the children are using the spellings correctly. And it monitors the impact of interventions as well. And these are all paper-based. And you've got two sheets. You've got a pupil assessment sheet and a teacher's sheet.
Karra, I might just add here
yes,
that there's the timeline so that teachers are reassessing what's been taught from what they've already assessed each half term. So in autumn 2, you will do autumn 1's assessment again, alongside autumn 2's, because what we want to see there is that children are consistently applying that correct spelling knowledge, that they haven't just retained it for half a term and then forgotten it, that they are then consistently doing it. And like I said, it monitors the impact of intervention. The idea is that you can also then take these into an intervention for the children to see where they've misspelt the word that you want to focus on. So when you've watched the supporting spelling video, it talks about what the interventions are. You can use this as an example alongside any other written work. We want to see examples where the child has misspelt it so that we can then show them how to correctly spell it and get them to then go back and edit their own work.
And there's guidance on that in the handbook, and that also the timeline that Tara's talked about is in the handbook as well. So you can find all of that information in the downloadable handbook that's on Oxford OWL. Then we've got the structure of the lessons. So we've got that same structure that we've had throughout the ELS teaching programme of review, teach, practice and apply. That follows all of these presentations that you'll be using at the front of the class. What I just want to do now, obviously more detail is provided on all of this in the training, but I just want to take you through a lesson so you can see how the structure's there, and you can see what we're asking of each session. So to start with, just as in the ELS teaching programme, you have this slide which just shows you where you are. It just gives that check of this is the point you are of teaching and this is what the spelling that you're going to be teaching today. You can see with these whiteboard presentations that we've kept that idea of having very clean screens with lots of breathing space around the text. We haven't got anything on this screen that doesn't need to be on this screen. So the focus for children is really on what they are learning and on those specific spellings. So on this,
and like here, but sorry,
Carrie. No, go.
I was just going to say that it's good to note here that when you're introducing the sound that you're going to focus on, every single way that the children have been taught in ELS appears here, and they appear in the order that they've been taught in the progression, and we've used the word that's part, or the part of the rhyme that the children will have used in learning that sound spelling correspondence as well.
So you've got that review of everything they've done before, and they're also starting from that place of, I know that, I remember having done that before. So that's on this first screen. And then we take them to the one that they are going to be focusing on during this lesson. And then, as Tara said, you need to click on this little pencil icon. This is very important. And on these screens, that icon pops out to another activity. in this case, it's a sentence that children have to read. So that icon will take you to this screen. It's a sentence that children have to read. And then when you move on to the next screen, it shows the word that is highlighted with that focused spelling in. So they know that that word contains the spelling that they're focusing on today.
And these sentences, sorry, Karra, those sentences that the children are reading, there are 3 GPC spellings taught this week. It's KN spelling, WR spelling, and GN spelling. So you can see that actually all 3 of those are in there. The children will reread these sentences throughout the week so that it's not the act of decoding and reading the sentence. It's actually that they get to recognize those words. They can see those spellings. They can see how you can use them in the real world in real sentences, and they happen to all appear together through magical writing. But so that the children get to not just think about, oh, here's just one sentence where I've got to look at one word. It's the same information, and they can then see, well, that one did have the spelling we looked at yesterday, and today I'm looking at this spelling over here. So they can just see that link constantly all the time.
And I believe they've got 2 sentences, haven't they, on each one? So they've got a chance to see that focused spelling in 2 different sentences. I was going to link to an actual lesson in this presentation, but I was in fear of Teams letting me down and everything crashing. Hence, we've just got them in the slides here. So then the next screen, this will be a really familiar layout from the ELS programme as well. And you'll notice that we've actually used some of the artwork from ELS in this. That is completely intentional because children will previously have associated some of these words with those artworks. And what we're doing is providing that familiarity for them. So they're not focusing on trying to work out what the artwork is or something. That they know many of these, they've seen them before. And the focus again is really on the spelling. So they'll be asked to read these 6 words that have that focused spelling in them.
And then 3 of these become the words they study in the lesson. And the other 3 are words that will appear in the apply activity for them on that day. So there is this constant link of what I've seen before, what I already know, what you're going to show me, and then what I've used before I can now use here again on my own when I'm independently writing.
So this is the first one of them. So this is the point where Tara's just said we take 3 of the words and we really look at how they're spelled. So this isn't just providing a list of spellings for children to take away and learn. This is actually looking at how they're spelled. And hopefully if you've been teaching the ELS phonics programme, you will recognise these icons at the bottom of the screen. So this is the spelling sequence. Hopefully you'll recognise them and hopefully the children will recognise them. Equally, if you didn't teach ELS as your SSP, there's the opportunity to teach these to children now because they will become really embedded for them throughout this programme because we use them lots. So it doesn't mean that they can't follow this.
This is where you spend most of your time in the lesson, is on these 3 words, actually breaking it down. And the team have been really clever about where they've placed the word on the screen so that you should be able to annotate the word as well if you wanted to. If you wanted to break it up into its GPCs, or you wanted to signify in some way the different parts of the word and how each part is spelt, you can write on these screens. I was doing it myself the other day. So you can then really break it down for the children and show them, right, well, this is where the spelling is. And this sound is spelt with this letter, and then this sound is spelt with these ones. So you can really talk about exactly what's going on within the word. And so this is where you're going to be spending most of your time. You know, the teaching part is the most important part. So really looking at how to break them down so that when you then have a child who says, oh, I can't remember how to spell that word, you can go to them, well, which ones do you think it could be? Are there 2 that you think it could be? Well, actually, we studied that one in this lesson and it's this one. So you can really use this to support you in getting them to break it down. So they then start to use that spelling sequence independently at the tables. And then if they can't remember how to spell that sound spelling correspondence, you can then have that conversation with them and say, it's this one. Or which 2 do you think it could be? And let's work out which one it is now. So you can start to use that dialogue to break it down so they start to do that themselves, because let's face it, that's pretty much how we all spell words we don't understand as adults, as we break it down into the component sounds, and often you write it down twice and which one looks right, because that's what we're doing. We're like visually mapping words to support our understanding of spelling. So that's why this is here and why you need to break it down for them in that kind of detail.
And you've got 3 of these, and so as Tara said, you spend your time working through these. You don't feel you need to rush through these. These are absolutely the time to sit and look at these carefully, and all 3 of them will have been on that initial slide with the 6 words for them to read on. You move through these, and then you've got the opportunity, children have the opportunity to write these words. So the space is being given here for them to write the words. It's worth just noting that sometimes you will ask that you will be asked to ask them to write 3 words, and sometimes it will be 2. And that is because where there isn't a 3rd word, they will be writing that word in the apply section when they're writing a dictated sentence. So it's not an error if there's 2 on some and 3 on others. Where there is 2, they will be writing that word, but it will be part of a dictated sentence. So again, you've got your spelling sequence at the bottom of here to help children to work out how they spell that word. But you will have spent all of that time taking them through how to spell these words. You're not asking them to spell them without giving them that information to begin with. You have given them all of that. You are not asking something they can't do here. Do you want to add anything to the writing, Tara?
Just going to say this is a part where we say give, but we're not going to give them on this slide. You've already given it to them. So please don't write it on the slide, because then they'll just remember it and copy it and write it down themselves. So yeah, this is your opportunity to then see. And if you're using whiteboards, and we've said it's up to you what you do, whether you have a spelling book or whether you use whiteboards. If you have whiteboards on the carpet during the teach part of the lesson, then the children can be breaking down that word as well for themselves, so that they've actually practiced writing it as well successfully and knowing that the way that they spelt it is correct because they've then studied it in detail. So just then making sure that you either flip them over or wipe them clean before you show them this slide, so that they don't look at their partner who wasn't as quick as them and copy their spelling. So just kind of thinking about as a classroom management point, don't click onto this slide until everyone's ready to go if you're using whiteboards.
And then we've got another slide with that special little icon that you need to click on. So you click on that one and it takes you to this. And this is just one simple activity here of dragging and dropping the correct spelling to complete the word. So you're just asking children here to think about, they know both of these are spellings for the R sound, but which is the correct one? And this isn't something children sit with a computer and complete independently. So there aren't screens and screens of these. This is just you with the children doing this at the front of the class. So you're just modelling this at the front of the class so that they know they're choosing one of those 2. It isn't a case of scrolling through screens here. We've then got this slide here, which you need to edit to spell the word correctly. The word that needs spelling correctly is obviously highlighted in blue here, and it will have been one children have seen in those words they read at the beginning. And similarly to how Tara said, the sentences before contain spellings. You'll see you've got the GN spelling for N here. So they will see this sentence again and there'll be a different word that needs editing. So you've got that consistency built in and you've got that progression built in throughout the programme. They will see the same sentence again and it will be a different word that they have to change the spelling of. This is very much you modelling this at the front of the class. So you've got your pen tool on the whiteboard and you're modelling this at the front of the class, because this is then something children are going to have to go and do as an apply activity, which you will see in a moment. So this is really making sure you do this, how children should be doing this.
And so this, I'm just going to talk about the national curriculum here for a minute. This replicates the needs for children to be able to independently correct errors in their work. So you are teaching them the act of proofreading and correcting their work here, actually showing them how to do it to be successful, and that's going to ensure that they're then able to meet the expected standards. So I'm going to quote the national curriculum now. It says, misspellings of words that pupils have been taught to spell should be corrected. Other misspelt words can be used as an opportunity to teach pupils about alternative ways of representing those sounds. Pupils should be able to make simple additions, revisions and corrections to their own writing by proofreading to check for errors in spelling, grammar and punctuation. So here we've got a spelling error. Now, whatever your marking policy is in terms of how you highlight those errors to the children, what we need to start doing is looking at, right, what did I think? How did I think it was spelt? Because I can see that this is spelt wrong. So I now know that Ren is definitely not spelled R-E-N. Absolutely not, because you're telling me it's wrong. You're teaching me it's wrong. And now you're going to show me how to correct it. So that's where you can have those conversations of, well, how do we know to spell the sound? We know we can spell it with an R, or we know we can spell it with W-R. Hopefully, touch wood, they're going to recognise the fact that in today's lesson, they're all with a W-R. They've also read this word earlier on, so they know how to spell this word, fingers crossed, by this point in the lesson. You've been talking about it for like 15 minutes, so we've made sure that children are really explicitly clear. And so this is where you, as the teacher, model this activity to your children so that they know, when I have a word that I have spelt incorrectly that I should be able to spell, and you've shown me where it is, I have the authority to go back and change my own writing, because that is a skill that we spend years trying to get. I mean, I know you'll all have had it too, where I've got year 6 kids that don't think they're a real person because they haven't put a capital letter in their name, and I'm still going, are you real or not? There are so many times where we need children to proofread and to correct their work, and they need to do it independently to prove that they can meet that expected standard. So this is your opportunity in these lessons where you have this activity to teach them how to do it. So when they can go into the apply book, and you'll see, if you've already got the books in your school and you've started, you might have seen it already. There are 2 where we've done exactly the same thing here, highlighted it for the children so they can see which word it is they need to focus on respelling. And the 3rd one, they need to find it independently. But they've got the good hint that they know the sound and it's not spelt in the way that they've been focusing on that lesson. So it is the act of teaching the correction of spelling, and the highlighting of these show the children that they're spelt wrong. So we're not accidentally going to remember the wrong spelling. We are telling them this is spelt incorrectly. So do not spell it like this, because this is not how we spell it. And then you can take the opportunity to teach them how to proofread and error correct their work.
And then all of that is leading up to the activity that they will do in here. So within the presentations, we have the actual page that you will ask children to go away and complete in their apply book. If it's not clear enough, you can zoom in on this on your board. So this is giving you an opportunity to really take children through that page in the apply book step by step before you ask them to go and apply their learning. So you make it really clear to them what they need to do in each activity on this page. And this is where they are using all of the knowledge that you've been teaching them in the lesson, not just the spelling for the sound, but all of the different ways that you've been teaching them to write and edit their own work. So that is all here. This sample lesson I'm showing you here has the apply book in it. So that is their application. And Tara's talked about the importance of the national curriculum saying that they need to learn to edit their work. Another thing that you will know is really covered a lot in the national curriculum for the spelling at year 2 is that dictation. So at this point in the lesson, you will be prompted here that the children are either completing this page in their apply book, or you are dictating a sentence to them that they will be writing. So the application of their learning is one of those 2 things.
And just to be really clear, because there is a question in the chat, the slide before this one where Karra showed with the highlighted word, that is for you as the teacher to model to the children. So the children aren't doing anything here, you are modeling it. You can obviously do it as a collaborative process where you talk to the children and you have a discussion around what part of the word is spelt wrong, how should we be spelling it, model correcting it for them. Then you can model what your policy is for how you would like them to show that they're crossing it out, whatever you want to do. Cross it out with a single line. You can be constantly reinforcing how to show their corrections in their work. But in the apply book, that's where they do it independently. So at that point, whether it's the misspelling of Ren, that is for you only to do. You are showing them how to do that successfully, talking to them about the spelling, talking to them about how it should be spelt, showing them how to correct it. It's their turn in the apply book.
So that's a lesson of a whiteboard presentation. As I said, they all follow a similar structure, but you'll get slight differences when it comes to looking at changing the ending of a word before adding a suffix, then they click the pencil, you click the pencil icon, and you'll be taken to a screen that really step by step shows how that happens. And as I said, it will either be the apply section pointing to the apply book, or showing a sentence, and you don't need to go elsewhere for this sentence. You click the pencil icon and it shows you the sentence you need to be dictating. Very small font so the children can't copy it, but it shows you the sentence within the presentation. So it takes you step by step through for every lesson, and does what the ELS Phonics programme does. It makes sure that you and the children are both familiar with that lesson structure, so that you aren't focusing on what might be coming next. You are always just focusing on teaching children to spell, and they are focusing on learning the spellings. And now I think Caroline's going to take you through the costs.
Good afternoon, everybody. So yes, these are the costs for Essential Spelling. As Tara and Karra have pointed out, the subscription for the training and the subscription for your IWB are both £40. So I'm going to take you through what we have from Oxford University Press. So the online teaching subscription of £40. Of course, if you do a multi-year subscription of 3 years, you'll get 25% off that. We have the alternative Phase 5 sign mats, and the price is £12.75 for a pack of 10. You have your apply book, which is £42.50 for a pack of 10 as well. And then you have your very large poster, which is £20. So in a one form entry, that is around about £200. And your ongoing costs will be your subscription after your 3 years, and then of course your apply books. As Karra pointed out, your training comes directly from KST, and we can send you a link to apply for that training, and it's £40 per year. And that's the costs.
Thank you. I think we're now questions. I'm just looking in the Q&A to start with. I think there's some specific questions about functionality of the whiteboards. The earlier lessons are slightly different to the lesson you might have seen today. You don't start using your apply book until week 3, because those earlier lessons are really covering what the children will have learnt in Phase 5. So if you haven't made it to week 3 yet, you won't have seen that activity book slide yet. If there's anything more specific on that, I think we're going to be able to offer an email address afterwards that people can email specifically if you want to share some screen grabs with us or something. But everything should be in those sessions. And if you're unsure if the presentation is right, I can assure you they are right. I've been through and tested all of them. But if you're unsure if anything's right, then I would go to the lesson plan that's in the handbook, and that will reassure you that that's what that lesson should be, and that you perhaps haven't reached the point of the lessons with the apply book pages left yet. Those first couple of weeks, the lesson structure is slightly different.
I'm just looking, I can see at the top I've got 3 sessions a week. What's suggested for the other 2 days? This is really up to you and what your curriculum time allows you for. I mean, in our schools, the other 2 days we're teaching grammar and reviewing phonics. So we, as a kind of rule of thumb, go through the whole of the summer term again from year 1 and year 2, just to consolidate that phonic knowledge and make sure that any children who haven't yet consolidated all of that knowledge have the opportunity to do so. And we teach our grammar curriculum as well. So the other 2 days are, I would say, free, but they're a choice for you to what you want to put into your curriculum. So I would suggest that you would be reviewing phonics and looking at the grammar element of the curriculum there. Someone says, I can't find the dictated sentence in the presentation. They are under that pen tool that Karra showed you, but they're also written in the lesson plan for every single day. So the dictated sentence is there for you. You can read it off the page if you have the handbook in front of you. Someone says, how do you see us keeping a track of assessments on ELS? There is an online tracking system. Unfortunately, Katie and I did talk about this a lot, and we talked about different ways in which we could track this and how we might reasonably track it. And the reality is the children have to spell the words. They've got to write them down so that you know that they can spell them. And short of us then creating an online grid where you manually have to go in and insert every single word that they have spelt correctly or incorrectly, the easiest thing is to have that paper assessment and then to use that assessment to support you in deciding whether that child requires an intervention or not, and then to monitor one to the next time when you repeat it if that spelling has improved. So for example, in autumn 1 and autumn 2, you go over the spellings twice. So by autumn 2, they've not only had what could potentially be 14 weeks of using that spelling, having had it been taught to them, but they've also been taught it explicitly twice and have had the opportunity for intervention. So there is no online tracking system, because it would be you manually sitting there, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And honestly, I think that's a waste of your time. We are all so busy. No one has time to sit there and do that. It's much easier for you to have those things in front of you and then to monitor that child's journey, and also to compare it to what you're seeing in their written work as well. I hope that that's an acceptable answer. But yeah, I basically, like, it's, if you do an online tracking system, it's work for work's sake, and I don't want to give you any more work. I'm trying to make your life easier. Great, thank you. Okay. Use phonics tracker to assess the face sounds in year 2 and the hardest reading spell words to run interventions. Should I still separately assess reading and spelling the year 1 and 2 common exception words in the national curriculum? The year 1 national curriculum I'm sorry, I'm not sure that I entirely understand the question. You're assessing the phase sounds in year 2 and the hardest reading spell words so you can run interventions. Should you still assess reading and spelling the year 1 and the year 2 common exception words in the national curriculum? Year 2 common exception words are in the spelling programme, and year 1s have already been taught in ELS, so they're all there. Hopefully that answers that question. Let me know if I've misunderstood, and I'm sorry. I think that's the end of those questions. Let me see if there's any more in the chat.
There's one here, Tara, that I know we talked about before, about children who aren't secure in phonics. Should they still be taught phonics instead of spelling or alongside?
So we did talk about this earlier.
We did.
It's a really good question. And there are, I suppose there are, I mean, there's really only one answer, which is the opinion that I'm about to share with you. It's not that I'm saying that my answer is gospel. It's just that logically, there cannot be a different answer to this one, which is, if you have children who, for example, you've been using our slowed SEND progression, you've got children who are not working at the same point as their peers in learning to read, if they cannot read those GPCs, so you haven't finished the teaching in spring of year 1, if they can't read them, they can't spell them because they can't access them. So logically, they need to consolidate their phonic knowledge before they learn the spelling curriculum. What you could do, and what I know some schools who I've spoken to in the last couple of weeks are doing, is that if they are teaching the spelling and then they've noticed, oh, I'm not entirely sure everybody knew that one, they are then repeating the ELS lesson the next day that teaches that grapheme. Or they're doing it the other way around. They're repeating the ELS lesson that teaches the grapheme, and then they're doing the spelling lesson the next day, just to give the children more opportunity to see it before they're then having to apply it. I will caveat that by saying that if you do not complete the spelling programme in year 2, you will not have given them the national curriculum for year 2. So if you've got children that are functioning at all other levels at the year 2 national curriculum and there is no EHCP, special educational need, that is preventing them from accessing the year 2 national curriculum, and you do not complete the programme, you will not have met the requirements of the curriculum. So you might want to have a phonics lesson in the afternoon, or do that where you kind of leapfrog between the two, and then when you get to the point where you're looking at suffixes, you could kind of put 3 or 4 lessons into a week to try and make up your time. I would recommend that you practice phonics outside of this lesson every day if you can, and if not, on the other 2 days of the week. But yeah, you need to make sure that you have closed those phonic gaps as quickly as possible. Equally, logically, if you've got children that have struggled to learn to read, and therefore you have slowed the progression for them in reading, they might need to do one day on this lesson, and then the next day they might need to do some application of it. So you slow that down for them as well, because you can't then sandwich 5 lessons into 1 week, because if they were having to slow down learning to read, they're not going to be able to learn to spell at an accelerated rate. Spelling is more complex. It's not just the inverse operation of learning to read. It's not like, oh, I've got all the sounds in my head and all the GPCs, and now I just magically can put which one it is in the right place in the right word. It doesn't work like that. Reading has to underpin spelling. You have to not just only have that GPC knowledge, but you also have to have visually mapped those words as well. That's why when we as adults write words down, if we're not sure if they're spelled right, we are looking, does that look right? Which one looks right? Because in your head, you haven't begun as an adult, hopefully you've mapped a lot of them. You have mapped what the word looks like. It is a multifaceted skill. So if you haven't read enough, if you are not a fluent reader, if you've not had enough access to reading those words within texts, you are going to need to practice that skill more before you can be a reliable speller. So sort of have to decide where you're going to draw your line in the sand, but I feel compelled to say again, if you do not complete the spelling programme, you will not have delivered the national curriculum for year 2 to your children. So maybe you want to do phonics lesson outside of that time in addition.
And we did talk earlier as well, didn't we, Tara, about the fact we provide 3 lessons each week. If you, for example, are following the slowed SEND progression, it pinpoints on that progression the point that the children are secure that you could then teach spelling. If that means that for the first term you are teaching phonics and not teaching spelling because they're just not there, then you have that option to up the number of spelling sessions in a week. So if you taught 5 sessions in a week, 4 or 5, depending on when you started it, you could still fit it all into year 2. And if you are following that slow progression, it pinpoints exactly the point where you could start then teaching spelling.
And like I say, and kind of what Kara's saying there is that if you do have to then put more lessons into 1 week, please don't put it with the specific code. Give them some breathing space between each of those lessons. You might do it when you get to the, no change to the root word, because the root word is the root word and you're just adding suffixes. It's a simpler concept for them to grasp in terms of what's happening. Or when you're dropping the E and adding a suffix, it's a repetitive process. The same thing is happening over and over and over and over again. You've got a different suffix, you might have a different root word, but it's that same process. So where it comes to processes that you go through in spelling, those would be if you have to put 5 into a week. That would be the ones to group together, but give the children breathing space when it comes to the specific GPCs that we teach. There are a few littered throughout the programme as well, just based on frequency of usage, where it was logical to put them based on what is going on in the rest of the curriculum. So just when you get to those points, if you're trying to accelerate their way through the rest of it, those are the places to actually give them the breathing space.
There are
and as
also,
a phonics leader,
I was just going to say there's 2 weeks at the end of summer as well, aren't there, that are set aside for review. So if you need that time to make sure that you have taught all the year 2 content, then you have 2 weeks there as well.
And those 2 weeks, if you are getting to the end of summer 1 and you're thinking, oh, I think some people might come to check that my children are where they say they are, and I might need a little bit more evidence that you could spell some of these words correctly, you could take those 2 weeks and put them at the beginning of the summer term and cover off those bits that you need to have evidence for if you know that your children aren't quite there. So those 2 weeks, we put them at the end because we all know that there's sports days and shows and lots of different things happening. And so it's what you can then work around your recapping what you need. But equally, if you know that you need to do some work on something for a timeline, that you then put that there at the beginning of the summer term and make sure that you've got that done. So, and then I'm reading... Someone says, as a phonics lead, does the spelling program still use give, give, give? It absolutely does. It's give, 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 and then you give, give, and then you give, and then hopefully the children can be independent. So you give them as much as they need. That's what that breaking down of that word is, talking about what's going on in the spelling. then there's a little bit of support when it comes to showing them how, you know, how are we going to correct the spelling of this word? What do we know? What can we see is not right, given what we've been focusing on today? Right, so how should we be spelling this word? Let's do this together, even though I'm going to be the person that writes it. And then they have the opportunity to be more independent. And then you can be with them on the carpet, you know, when they are writing these words. If you notice something, that's the time to intervene. Much like in ELS, when the children write those 3 words, if you notice that this sound spelling correspondence is wrong, you go and talk to them at that point in the lesson. Hey, this part's right, but look, this one actually is this one. How does it work if you have children in year 2 with lots of phase 3 and 5 phonic gaps, didn't pass the phonics screening check and are very weak? I'd be looking at what I can do to support those children prior to starting them here with the spelling programme, looking at what's going on with phase 3, what's going on with phase 5, why haven't they consolidated that knowledge? Did they have phase 3 solidly before they started phase 5? There is a reason why phase 3 is taught and then you have a term and a half where there is no new content in terms of graphemes being taught to the children. You have then got, 21 weeks to make sure that they know phase 3 before you do that light touch introduction of phase 5 at the beginning of summer 2 for your reception kids, and then you repeat it in year 1. You've got 21 weeks to make sure they know phase 3. And if they're struggling to retain sound because there's something that's as a barrier for that child, then you can use the SEND guidance to support you in slowing down the progression for that group of children. So I would be looking at what are the needs of those children in this group, because we say children, so I'm assuming there's more than one. Yes, I'd be looking at the needs of those children. I'd be looking at what do they need from me to close those gaps? How am I going to close those gaps quickly and efficiently? Am I going to teach them in a group if they all got the same sound? I'm going to reteach them the lessons. What is it that I need to do for them? And then think about how, if they are then expected to get the expected outcome at the end of year 2, how am I then going to work out teaching them the spelling curriculum to ensure that they then have access to it all? Next question, would you recommend combining your spelling with handwriting so we can practice writing this week's words in our cursive handwriting? You could absolutely, I mean, I would always be modelling whatever the handwriting policy is, I'd be modelling it. There's a reason why things are in print in the book and why they're print on the screen is because I'm sure you can appreciate almost all of you have got your own version of what your handwriting policy looks like. And if we join the wrong letter in the wrong place, then that won't match up with what your handwriting policy is. So it's print, it's easier for the children to read, and it means that there cannot be absolutely no mistakes in terms of how you do your joins. And so you should, definitely be modelling handwriting to the children in the as the expectation is in our schools, the children will be writing in cursive handwriting, following our handwriting policy when they write in their reply books, and that would be how it would be modelled to them by the teacher as well. Those are all the ones in the chat, so I'm just going to go over into the Q&A and see if there are any others that have come up. Where do you find the slowed down SEND progression? It's on Oxford OWL. There's an SEND filter, and there's some information there. There's also some additional resources to support you. I think that's everything.
I think
Can't
that's
see any
everything.
other questions.
If we've missed anything, do pop your hand up and we can unmute you if we have missed one, but I can't see any more.
Just to say, Lauren Walsh, I'm sorry you haven't had any feedback from the primary sales consultant website. I am on holiday from tomorrow, but if you're able to email me tonight, I'll be able to forward you the details of your local consultant.
Brilliant. I don't think there's any more then. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you joining at the end of the day. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Debbie.
Thanks, Debbie. See you soon.
If you do have any questions, hopefully by now, if you're in ELS school, you know how to get in touch with us. You can go to your OUP consultant, and if they can't answer the question, then they can send it to us and we'll answer it and get back in touch with you. Or you can come directly to us, els@ks-t.org, if you want to hear mine and Katie's thoughts on whatever the question might be that you want to ask us.